How are you? Mko salama, mko salama? Sawa. Unasikia? Yes, the live. The live. I need to connect the mic. Oh, actually, it's
Okay, let us get settled on our boats. Let us get settled on our boats. We are getting about to start. If you are adjusting your pieces, please adjust now. If you are to adjust your pieces, please adjust now. Getting ready to begin. If you are adjusting your pieces, adjust now. I'll give some instructions on the washrooms we are using. Welcome to the top of the boat. These boats are being broadcasted to mean that anybody can follow from where they are. Be mindful of the tables that are out. If anyone comes to the tables, then get from our last side. Next. If anyone of us needs to use the washrooms, the ladies' washrooms are just here, and the open washrooms are the other place. I wish you best of luck. I will go ahead and start the clock. I am coming to start the clocks. Okay, I'm coming to bring it to you.
So welcome to the round 8 of the final Kenya National Schools Chess Championship. At least we have sort of got to a point where we have stable video, a couple of technical challenges as we try and make sure that our boards are up. It's a fairly noisy environment, so you can hear some background noise coming through, and we do have our boards. So allow me to just get that ready for you. We do have our boards showing right now, so that we'll actually have a look at what boards we are following, all the boards that are currently in play. We'll start with the top board, which has, this is, yes, Jamie Obora Kanago versus Simiyu Baraka Daniel. Daniel Baraka is white. Please note, you can actually comment, and your comments will show live on chat. Again, once again, we remind you to keep it civil and child-friendly. D4, D5. A very unusual move here, knight to C3. In this kind of situation, maybe they are planning for, you know, either what is called Jabava London. Often we want to play this knight move to C3 only after this move has played, this pawn has played, so we don't block it. But there's a new trendy line called the Jabava London. The normal London system goes bishop f4 itself. But in the Jabava London, you have, and in fact, that's what we are seeing, bishop f4 and knight to c3. Now, one of the reasons why this move actually happens is because, and I think it could have been played, let's just check if it was played. No, it wasn't. But the move that tends to come out is a move like this. And the idea is that this knight has to defend, but then in this situation, the knight has to come back. So what black is waiting for, what white is waiting for actually in this position, and the reason he's played this move, he's waiting for this c5 move to be played first, then he wants to try this move. And it's a very interesting kind of a conversation. I'm not sure how it will progress. Let's say, yeah, because this bishop, this knight is so the correct waiting move here was actually this move. You should have played this move, but of course he doesn't want this spin, so maybe he knows the line, what he's looking for. So then I'm expecting the move that was played was a3, and yeah, Jamie also knows what the problem is. He immediately stops this knight from coming down to b5. And with such a simple move, then the entirety of the Jabava London, I think, is lost. And black will most likely play moves such as c5, knight c6, bishop probably d6, or bishop e7, castle. White on the other hand will play the modest looking d3, bishop d3, knight f3, castle this side. This is what we're expecting, because those are natural moves. On board number, on the other board, this is under 15, I believe. Paul Orlando Jr. versus Wanjala Samuel. This has e4, c5 Sicilian, knight f3, d6, and then we now have the c3 slightly delayed Alapin, which is also an interesting line. Interesting. Yeah, this looks like a pawn sacrifice, but it's not really a sacrifice. Very tricky move. If you make the mistake of taking this pawn, then of course there's a check here, and yes, you're attacking your king, it's a check, but what are we doing at the same time? Attacking this knight, and so you lose this knight. A very nice trap that has been set here by white. Nasty trap. Of course, after bishop blocks that check, now this pawn is actually under attack, and this move was played. Natural developing moves. So here we have an interesting trade. What has happened is that white has taken a light squared bishop, so white has a bishop pair. That is an advantage. But what has happened? This knight has moved 1, 2, 3 times. The bishop has moved only once. So by doing that, one trade-off is that white has given black 2 moves. Very important thing to understand. White has given black 2 additional moves that weren't there before, and as a result of that, we're in a situation where yes, white has the 2 bishops, but black is ahead in development. Black is ahead in development because he's gotten 2 extra moves he didn't have. The move he was behind before and the current move, and as a result, he can castle queenside in 1 move. Doesn't look very safe, but at the same time, he can play e5, bishop e7, and castle in 3 moves. He's joined these rooks. Look at white. White doesn't have a single piece developed. They need to play d3, bishop out, castles, knight out, or bishop out, knight out. So those are basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves before he can get his pieces out, while black has 3. Very interesting to understand that chess has moves, and moves is time. And again, the move bishop g5, bishop b5, this move that has been played, I don't like that move because of this very move that has been played. And now either the bishop goes back, wasting further time, or you take this knight, and if you do so, then where's your advantage? Why did you give up so many moves? In which case now you don't have a bishop pair anymore, and black is just slightly better because of a lead in development. And in fact, that's what has happened in the position. That's exactly what has happened, and we'll keep tabs on this board. I want to go to a second board that is one of the most exciting boards, and I know this line very well. This is the Maroczy bind structure in the Accelerated Dragon. I approve, Bella, of your line, and Shukri is playing. Let's see, I'm seeing something off on my, let's just go back. Yeah, let's go to this game. This is under 15 girls, one of the strongest categories in the entire tournament. So this was a Sicilian, e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, very principled, d4, takes on d4, takes on d4, and then now this is what is called the Accelerated Dragon, because you put this bishop on this diagonal. This is called the Dragon Bishop, and then it breathes fire throughout this line. Very, very powerful bishop. You may get to see whether it works out or not. Now, why is it called Accelerated? Because in normal Dragon, this move d6 has been played, and in this case it is not. So if I go back and show you what the normal Dragon looks like after picks, let's say this move is played. I'll not play the perfect order, to be honest, or let's say let's just take it from the top. Yeah, this, then we often have d6, d4, takes, knight attacks the pawn on e4, knight defends it, and then now you play this g6 move with the idea of having the Dragon Bishop sitting on this square. Once again, that's your plan. However, comparing to the position you have on the board, then we actually have this move has been played up to this square. Now, what we are saying is that the main advantage that we would have in the dragon is that we can later on play this move 2 steps instead of playing it 1 step. That is the whole point of the accelerated dragon. And so we'll go back and see what happens. And the main disadvantage of the accelerated dragon is that it allows this move, which is called the Maroczy bind. Maroczy bind because the pawn on c4, the pawn on e4, what are they doing? They're stopping black from ever playing this pawn move, d5. And this is black's break. This is the pawn move that opens for most of his position, most of his or her position, to create counterplay, to allow the pieces to have freedom to move around. It's very important to get your pieces to active squares. And with these 2 pawns sitting on e4 and c4, then it makes this move very difficult. This is a Maroczy bind and is the main, really the most challenging continuation against the accelerated dragon. So the moves played, these are actual accurate moves. Very interesting move. It looks like black is hanging a knight, but in fact it's not hanging. If you pick the knight, then this particular knight is also hanging. A very common line, although it's often played after black has castled. We'll see how this goes. I think it is that has been picked actually. So we are now expecting knight takes on d4. That's the move we're expecting. Don't be tempted to make this blunder, of course, thinking that you're attacking the queen, because again, I can actually just pick here and I'll pick your queen as well. If you pick my queen, I pick your queen and I'm just a piece up as white. I don't think that's happening. These guys know they're opening, and that's what we're expecting in that game. The next game, 2 very strong players, Jeshurun. Jeshurun is Jadarudo's brother, so actually it's quite interesting. I've called him that. Oluchiri. The Oluchiri siblings, very, very strong chess players, playing against Gideon Simiyu. This is under 13 open. And in this position, what we have is, again, as another Sicilian, very good. Matthew and I approve of this. We've seen these lines before, and this particular line is called the Najdorf Sicilian. Looks like a very simple move. Why are you playing this pawn here? But actually, in many Sicilians, because black is playing on this side, this move tends to be necessary, but at the same time, it stops anything from landing on this square. This knight may want to land there, this bishop may want to come here. Black is saying, never ever, that is not happening. But in addition, now that move supports b5 move, which may allow the bishop to come to this square. The knight may come out here or here. The rook may come out this way. It really supports a lot of developing moves. So this is one of the strongest Sicilian lines. Let's see what was played. Interesting, very unusual line. Someone is going to tell us exactly what they think about this particular move. And also just an interesting choice by Simiyu Gideon. It looks as if this move, e5, leaves behind this pawn, which is indeed a backward pawn. And it's backward because there's no pawn on the side that can defend it, meaning that if it's attacked, it must be defended by a piece. So that makes it backward. In addition, it's an open file, semi-open file, meaning that it's easy to attack. But this is actually typical Sicilian theory. It's very hard to attack this pawn in practice, and getting control of this d4 square is actually much more important. Later on, white will be able to play d5, and we expect those things to happen in this game. So Simiyu Gideon is actually playing correctly here. And yeah, very very interesting. Now, one of the drawbacks of what Simiyu played was this pawn hanging behind. And of course, whenever you have a weak pawn, remember that one of the bigger issues is the square in front of it. This is a bigger weakness than actually the pawn itself, because often this can be, someone can make use of this pawn, this square, to gain a good advantage. And I'll show you a move that's probably a mistake. This is a mistake now, I suspect, because maybe there's a move like, it doesn't work here. What I was saying is the instances where, let's say, you pick and then you pick this guy back. But the knight on c3 will pick, and now you have two attackers here. I'll probably find a good example, maybe bishop g5. Yes, now we attack the bishop moves back. Now we have a very a tactic that often happens in chess, where you can actually pick here, and if you pick the knight, then of course you can pick here. Again, in this line it doesn't work very well because this pawn is hanging at the end, but that's generally the principle that we are looking at. So however, if we ignore this tactic, the principle we're trying to describe is something like this. You take this knight, and suddenly this square becomes extremely weak. And this is one of the key drawbacks of the pawn structure that we are seeing. Now, why am I telling you all that? Because in this position, white played knight to d5. And that's a pretty bad move, because if I pick this pawn immediately, and now you place a pawn, it means none of your pieces can ever come to this position. And this is actually pretty unpleasant, not just because of occupying that square, but because of black's next move, which is f5, immediately threatening to go e4, winning a piece. Therefore, white has to waste another move, moving the pieces back, and already you can see signs that white is going to be in a lot of trouble in this game. He's playing Gideon Simiyu, rated 1893. Jeshurun is playing white, and I think he's made a couple of moves in the opening that are not really ideal. So we'll see how this goes on. Another interesting game. This is a game between Atara Wright and Charlene Onyango Gadoni. Charlene is a player that I've had a chance to coach once in a while. I'm proud to see the lines. Okay, maybe we did a couple of sessions, and this line actually is not my line, this is hers, so she's done a very good job learning some of the things that should be done in this kinds of position. And I sort of a c3 Sicilian, a c3 setup, and clearly in this position white has a very strong center, and black has flankated the bishop. It's not a dragon, but it's a dragon-like bishop, so it's a new system, so not a new system, but what we call the neo systems, where black doesn't contend the center immediately, but does so indirectly by putting pieces on the side, and later on the argument is that the white center is overextended and it can be attacked. Indeed, right now the move that is being recommended is actually to play this move, and one of the big ideas is if I play a random move, like let's say a3, then this spin happens, making this center extremely weak. So already interesting opening choices being made by the respective players in the categories. I think the last game you're going to look at is Apamoshem Mali versus Manyeki Nathaniel. I'm expecting a very strong game here. By now you must know Manyeki Nathaniel is Africa under 9 champion, under 9, under 8 champion actually, Africa. And Apamoshem is a young man. I've seen his games, very, very strong, and this will not be an easy game. This is my expectation. Let us see what happened. Again, a Sicilian. Sicilian has become quite common amongst the strong juniors, and this is one of the ways to avoid many theories by going bishop b5, many theoretical lines, and a very professional play by both players, getting their pieces out, and I think it's really expected. Again, very nice move that is professional. This dragon bishop, if left to their own devices, can become quite a monster. You can see these dark squares along this diagonal are very strong. So getting it off is a good plan, and often that is done by playing a bishop to h6. This bishop cannot be taken for free. It's protected by the queen. But then the bishop can't move away, because if you move away, then you take this rook and you win an exchange. So in this case, this exchange of this strong bishop is forced, and that is exactly what we see. And yeah, very, very professional play by both players very early on. Now we are quite privileged that today we are going to be joined by a very strong player, multiple-time Kenyan national champion, maybe one-time national champion, but one of the strongest players in Kenyan history. This is none other than Joseph Methu himself. Karibu, Joseph.
Yeah, thank you, Victor.
Okay.
The games are very interesting.
Yeah.
There are a few upsets here and there.
Maybe you want to mention an upset here and there. What exactly has happened? What would you be referring to as an upset at this juncture?
I saw this top and who is this boy called? Kyle Cooper. He ended up drawing a very painful game, I would say.
Yeah.
And he was a very clear favorite to win. But he ended up drawing. So that's one of the upsets.
We can actually retrieve that game. I think it's an important one to show what it is you're referring to. Because the opponent I thought played very well. I was going around and I saw that he was quite, what can I say? He was quite confident in his game, and the game was actually very solid, very well played. So the draw was the expected outcome if I looked at it. And I sort of, you're an expert in these lines. Is there anything that, this is a game, round 7 game between Joe Njarumi and Kyle Cooker.
Now, there is something that you usually play after Bishop G5. There is this extremely sharp line where you simply take the pawn and you just stay with it. For instance, after E4, there is this sharp line of E5, which can be very disturbing if you don't know how to handle it. You can even see the evaluation is a bit
better for black.
It's better for black because the pawn naturally is not meant to come back. I know you have played this. I know you have played this quite a lot of times. Actually, you are the expert.
Yeah, but
because personally, I don't play Bishop G5 here. I simply prefer to play E3 to avoid the complications. So anyway, how did the game go? It was a slab. Is it semi-slab or slab?
It's a slab. It's a slab.
Now this should be drawish, definitely. All the bishops are out. Bishop F5, Bishop G5. It's actually a symmetrical structure of some sort. So Kyle was black. I mean, the problem here, I think, is his opening choice. Yeah. Because the only counterplay Kyle has is on the C file. There is no other counterplay black has, except on the C file. So I thought he had basically nothing. Now, there's something interesting here about, which is a bit dangerous. White has just gambled upon. And if you take, you get a Benko structure where you're actually 2 pawns up, not even one. Rook B8, Queen A6, or you can even take. And this structure is actually regarded very, very bad for black. It's like a Benko structure.
For black or for white?
For black, because black is the one that has the open fire.
Is it bad for white or bad for black?
It's very bad for white.
Bad for white, yes.
Very bad for white. Because you have not castled well. I control all the files. This knight might be loose at some point. The knight on C3. So the opponent... Actually,
it's an important one, because in that position, for example, what looks like a natural move loses immediately after just if you go forward, that works. Immediately now, natural move to castle, you lose immediately.
If you just castle.
Because now the knight is attacked,
Yes, you are overloaded here.
Because the knight is defending the bishop and the game is lost right away.
And quite frankly, your queen is also in a very uncomfortable spot at some point.
Wow.
And all these pieces are loose. So it's like a Benko structure where you are down 2 pawns, but the light bishop is bad, the knight is bad. I don't know even where the rooks belong at this point. So it's a very dangerous, and so it seems Kyle had prepared this because it's Kyle who sacrificed the pawn. The opponent didn't want anything to do with that. And now, honestly speaking, this game there is nothing much to talk about. His opening choice was very bad. I'm really struggling to find a way. Kyle took with the pawn to try to make the game interesting. Yes, but he should have taken with the bishop. It was a much better try. Now, there's something here that sometimes I calculate. For instance, let me make a random move. So I think most people who are watching, you need to understand something. Which piece do you need? Is it the knight or the bishop? For instance, you have an extra option of simply taking on F3, and then you go for knight versus bishop. So I don't know, objectively speaking, I like the knight in this position compared to this bishop, which is staring at a wall. But anyway, none of that happened. I'll try to make it interesting. I'll be going to the main games just now. it was just a recap of how this game ended in a draw. And after this, there's nothing much to do. F4, brilliant move. If you don't play F4 here, you play something like H3, you lose on the spot. Even to F4 looks bad already. So anyway, I think we should just go back to the games. It was a good game. It was a good game, generally. It was a good game. We are on round 8. Okay. I'll start from up there. Half game, half game. Jobava London, kind of structure. Already a step in the wrong direction. A3 is not a really objective move, in my opinion. What is the most testing line of the Jobava? I should presume it is when you make a move. The most testing line actually is C5. The most testing line of the Jobava is C5. The computer recommends this, but the reason why it recommends A6 is because C5 is met by knight B5 at some point. Not now, definitely, but at some point where and then you're forced to play things like knight A6, and knights don't belong on the stage. So that's why it's recommending A6. But the game went on fine. Oh, he played C5 eventually. Now, if you look at this position, who is better? I don't know. Black has a bad bishop. The C8 bishop, the light bishop is not so good. White, on the other hand, does not control the center correctly. I think it's just even here. Everyone has their ups and downs. Yeah, a 95 is a very good move, by the way. There is a general rule in chess. When you're cramped, exchange pieces. I feel like white does not have a lot of space here. So when you're cramped, exchange. So I'm assuming that should be a decent move. Queen F3 going for the checkmate as usual. This is Jamie is Jamie is a very sharp player. Aggressive. Decided to part with the bishop there. I'm not sure it's the best decision, but so we're here. Now white clearly cannot castle on the queen side, king side. There seems to be an issue here. For instance, let me give an example. If you castle on the queen side, black has an open g5, which is a bit dangerous. So I don't think castling is actually an option here. Even the king is much safer even in the center at the moment because of this pawn match. The pawns are a bit difficult. I think bishop takes f6 is not entirely sound. Black has the bishop there. On the other hand, Simiu doesn't have, I don't know, the bishop on d3 does not have a lot of future at the moment. The knight on c3, I'm not sure how you're going to maneuver it. So I'm struggling to find a plan for it. The engine says you open up the game. And maybe, just maybe, this can be good because you might even go for a bishop of opposite color. Oh, that's a blunder already. Move too fast. Not opposite color. Actually, bishop versus knight endgame. Something of the sort. Which is still okay. Yes, now, so this game will come back to it later. I think black should be fine here. Black should be fine here. The bishop pair should be enough compensation for equality. White has to find e4 at some point. Otherwise, that bishop on c6 is dangerous, and the bishop pair is actually really dangerous. Let's go to Paul Orlando, another top junior. I'm not a huge Sicilian expert, but the Alapin variation, controlling the center on the spot. Now, of course, this one is the famous trap. If you get greedy, there is this move which they play. So we have this trap where if you take the knight, there is this fact on the queen a4, queen takes knight. So it's usually a trap in the other queen Sicilian, but I'm pretty sure 1700s know that easily. So as you can see, black is baiting white to take the pawn, but now you can't even take. There is no check actually now. e5 takes. Takes. So far there is no balance. Knight versus dark bishop, knight versus dark bishop. I don't think there's anything much. Knight a3, queen d7. Black has moved the piece quite a lot. Yeah? The queen has moved. We have not developed on the king side properly. Still, it's saying black is supposed to be okay. There is no immediate threat. Now, I don't know, is it wise to go to the endgame or not? Takes. Whenever you have these 2 pawns, majority versus minority, if you have 2 pawns on one side of the board versus 3 pawns, or 3 pawns versus 4, you're supposed to launch a minority attack at black. So that means the pawn has to reach b4, a5, so that you undermine this pawn structure on this side. It's called the minority attack. We'll see if he'll find it. So far the game, he kept the queen. Queen e3 is not a good move, it comes with tempting. I've just put the queen somewhere else. Right, it's a fairly balanced game. If you ask me, I would say I prefer black here because black has more space. The bishop, the knight can move. The open file is currently being occupied by black, and also something very small to point out, yeah, which can actually affect the game. What dark squares? Some of them, 3. Black has put them. There's not much to talk about here also again. I will see how it progresses because you can even castle here. I don't think there's any... You can even castle. Castling is also a good move. Now there's this question that I always don't know how to answer, but someone might help me one day. Do you really want to go bishop versus knight? Bishop d5. It's a very, very serious debate. It's a very serious debate that at some point, if you want to be a strong player, you need to know which pieces to keep and not to keep. Now, I think the reason why the bishop g5 taking the knight is not a good move is simply because this is an open position. It's a very open position. You'll always need a bishop in open positions and a knight in closed positions. So I think bishop e3 here should be good. Bishop e3. Bishop g5, you don't need to give bishop versus knight when it's open. We have Kagambi Angel, the daughter of Kagambi. Close structure. This is a Caro-Kann. I'm not really an expert of e4 so much, but I'll try. So the most common move is c5 definitely. And fairly decent. I think Ngani knows this quite well. It looks like a French, but it's a Caro-Kann advanced. It's called advanced because the pawns have been advanced until the 5th rank. Now, what do we have here? Now, there are drawbacks to this e5 thing. White has space. That's the advantage. You have space. You are controlling all the squares. f6, d6, c5. But the problem is you have a permanent weakness on d4. So the advanced variation always has a problem with the d4 square, same as the French advanced variation. You will always have a problem with this pawn structure if you are not careful. But it should be good for black and white. It just depends if you know your theory. Bishop to b5. Now, actually, I want to point out this is actually slightly a positional move from who is this? From Cherry Mutol. Yeah? This is a positional idea. Now black has a backward pawn and the c5 belongs to white. So you might have, if you don't push c5 very quickly in this line, you might have a problem with this. I'm going just to make a very funny random moves. There is this maneuver, just any funny move. There is this maneuver where the knight blockades this c5 square. So you don't want to get into that. You are going to suffer probably the entire game. Positionally, that is. So bishop takes c6, hold that. The problem with that is you give up the bishop pair, which is not a good thing. But the position is closed, semi-closed. I don't think bishops will work here so well compared to knight. Knight f3, e6. And we are at this position. Black has 1 hour, 6 minutes. I think it will be a good time for black to actually take time and calculate in this specific position. It will determine the character of the game here. For instance, there is this move, c5. Yes, the computer will say it doesn't like it, but it's a positional move which simply goes into the same Benko kind of setup. You see, the computer said 0.7, but it's going down now. Anyway, the check doesn't work because you just block. You can even block or run away, and you go to an endgame. The problem with this position is the same one we have seen. This B and C file will give black enough counterplay. Now, if you want to know how a position is bad, yeah, it looks 0.1, but what does black play? White. You don't have bishop e3, you get double pawns. You don't have bishop g5 really because you're attacking nothing, the queen will get out. So what kind of plan do you have? Basically, you have to bring your rook to...
Methu,
Yes?
I do want to interrupt you briefly and just mention the people we are seeing on our screen right now.
Yes.
This is Apamo Shem Mali playing white
Yes.
versus Nathaniel Manyeki. These are our under 11 board ones playing. This is round 8. So
Okay.
that's Apamo Shem Mali. And on the right side, that is Manyeki Nathaniel. The young lady in blue, the next
Yes.
board, under 13 girls. This is Shalin Gadoni. Shalin Gadoni,
Yes.
you may remember her from other tournaments as well.
Yes, I've
very,
seen her.
very strong player who's playing decent chess. She is one of our
She's here.
stronger players.
She's playing Atara, right?
Atara, yes, Atara, right. And
Yes.
we can maybe have a chance to look at their games even as we show you a
Yeah.
couple of games from the other boards.
Okay, let's start with Manyeki then. The game has progressed. Still, the engine says no advantage. I don't really believe in it. The position looks complicated to me, at least to me. Now, of course, Manyeki and Shem Apamo understands that. The point you had mentioned, whenever someone plays the King's Indian or maybe the Dragon kind of setup with this bishop, it's always a good idea to exchange this piece. Now, in this position specifically, this bishop is unopposed. If you remove this knight, the bishop is actually a good piece. So it might be a good idea to exchange it. Now, there is a small inaccuracy that black did here, Manyeki. I think, in my opinion, sometimes if you don't want to exchange the bishop, you move the rook so that after bishop h6, you simply go if you want to maintain the bishop, because the bishop is a good piece. So if you're a dragon player, you understand structures where the bishop is there, not when it's not there. So you should have gone for this structure. I think it will have been a bit better if he prefers to keep the bishop. Now the problem is now, once he allowed bishop h6, it's too late to run. And then also another thing I usually debate with, let me just go back a bit. Now this is debatable in my opinion because we have a dragon setup. We need this rook somewhere. Now in a dragon setup, naturally, you can just get out the queen. And then if you go say queen d2, which rook to move is very important in this line. Because I know of lines where this is the correct rook to move, and then this one will go to b8 with the idea of expanding on b file, and then this bishop will become very useful.
That's a very strong point, Joseph, because you see what you're doing is very quickly you're giving, taking away the option of bishop to h6.
Yes. So it not only solves that bishop h6, but you're bringing the right rook. And also, maybe not in this example, but there's also this dragon tactic where sometimes, let me just move something. I don't know why it doesn't work here. Maybe we'll check. Or because there is
Queen can go back here.
there is usually this funny tactic where if you take here, intermediate. Now, if we backtrack, if we just go back and move the right rook, I know it doesn't work in this scenario, but I'm just giving a practical example. Now, if you take here, the problem is this check does not work because of the rook is not there. So king f8, you simply lose a piece for a pawn. So it's always good to know which rook to move. If I was black here, I think I would have played rook b8. So here, I think I would have expanded with rook b8 and then b5, and then b4, and then I try to get counterplay with this dark bishop. That will have been my plan, because now I feel like the rook on f8 is a bit lost.
Now, Joseph, you're saying that you'd have played, it looks very counterintuitive. For example, you're saying in this position that you'd play rook b8.
Yes, and then I leave c8 for the other rook on
that
c8.
Rook looks very obvious to you, and
Yes.
I think to a few other players also, but it looks quite counterintuitive. You're moving your rook
To b8.
a closed file.
Because the problem is, if you want to understand, you need to know where you are playing. Now, black can only play on the queen side.
Yeah.
You can't. There's nothing on the king side. You can't start playing knight h5, f5.
Wait, hold
It's
up
very
there.
weakening. Yes.
I agree with you. It's a concept I've been trying to teach my daughters.
Yes.
That one of the first steps you make before you continue your chess is figure out which side of the board am I
Yes.
playing. And there are three sides in general. The
Yes.
first side is the queen side.
Yes.
There's the center.
Center and the king
and then
side.
there's the king side.
Yes.
So it's this player who came up with this concept. That's why I had it from him, Jeremy Silman. He says that identifying the side is super important, and you only play on a side where you have an advantage.
Yes.
You have the potential of creating an advantage, and the only play on that side. If you try and play on the opposite side, there's a chance that you're going to lose. You're going to lose something. So in this case, we can say this bishop is facing this side.
Yes.
Your pawns, you have a lot more space on this side.
Yes.
You can play b5 and b4.
Yes. And then another. Yes.
Black had to play only on the queen side in this position.
And then another important thing, if you are stuck and you don't know which side to play, look for pawn breaks. The only pawn break you have is b5. The other pawn break you have is c4. Pawn break is just where the pawns touch each other at least. So the only place you can do pawn break sometimes gives you an idea of where to play. So I'm not really liking, like now, if you look at this position, you'll start noticing, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but what do I really want to do with this rook? Now, Manyeki has another idea here, which sometimes you have to make bad decisions to get something, yeah? Now that the rook might come to e8 at some point, he might have to start playing for the center with e5, and I don't know what else, and then he tries to break the center. Actually, I don't even like rook f8. As a King's Indian player, I would probably go for this funny line. If I'm in a must win, let me make a sudden move. By the way, for people who are listening, avoid putting your pawns like this. This is called the hook. Two pawns are being controlled by one, and if you get rid of the hook, you are left with a permanent weakness, an isolated pawn. Eh? Anyway, I was looking for a plan for Manyeki, so I can even just try to go King's Indian style because the position is closed. I go for f5 now, pawn break. That one gives you more chance of winning. Now there's f5. Yeah, even something like, let's say, rook b1, just a move. Let me just make a funny move. If you're a King's Indian player or a Dragon player, you know you can even sacrifice a pawn here for free. And sometimes these structures, the computer says it's bad, but the bishop is alive once again. So you're down a pawn for a lot of activity here. So I think that will be a plan. So I only have two plans for Manyeki here.
Important concept there, because the secret of chess is piece activity. And you
Yes.
can sacrifice material for piece activity.
Yes.
And you'll gain something back as well. Quite interesting.
I don't know why I think I liked white to play in the center now, because black cannot. If you notice now, black does not have very comfortable pawn breaks.
We have a question here from Athlete Questions. I think the first was from Maniki Kelly, who was asking, is it safe for white to castle queenside? I think this was in the Jabava, London. And I'm also seeing another question here by M. Joroge, who's saying, if white castle queenside, then bishop to h6 is played, and one sack the f8 rook via bishop h8. So,
Okay, now I think I've understood. Let me start with, Is it safe for white to castle queenside? So for you to understand this, we have to go
And I
back.
think this was in the Jabava London, because this was an earlier question. This was in the Jabava London. So maybe you can take those two questions in general, but this was the Jabava
Oh,
London.
the one for Jobava. So we'll check the
London,
Jobava, but generally we'll go back to the Jobava. And for me, it's not safe to castle on the queen side simply because there is always the sacrifice pawn, pawn sacrifice, pawn sacrifice. You can even be given a pawn. If your king is on this side, might not be a very good idea. We'll go for the Jobava and then we'll see. Now, Martin, you have asked about the bishop g7 idea. I'll have to go back here and just give a small example. G6, D3, bishop G7, bishop, maybe F4, knight F6. I'm just giving an example if it's safe to give up the H8 rook, as I think that's what I got it right. This line. Generally, if you want to know if it is safe to give up the rook, look at this bishop. It's extremely active on this file. You only give up the rook if you have the b5 break and they have castle. For instance, let's say white castles. B5, as you can see. So you are very correct. As long as you have this break of the queen side, you can give this. Actually, black is better here. Black is better. Now the king is slightly unsafe here. So yeah, you can give up the bishop for that, but only if you have this diagonal and also if you have the b5 break. I think that those are the only two things I would say. Now we were supposed to go to another game, huh? For who was there in the picture? Let's go to Atara Onyango Shalin. Should be an interesting game. Already very aggressive. Sicilian once again. Rosolimo, I think. So here there are many moves you can debate with. You can take this pawn, this knight. You can even take with a D. You can even take with a B. There's nothing much to talk about here. There are so many lines that generally, so this is a very aggressive line controlling the D4 square on the spot. Everything theory. Queen B6, I've never seen this line before, but H3. Now notice the weakness a bit is D4, so they're avoiding bishop G4 and then the pressure. Once again, everyone is playing this bishop G7 idea. Black will play on the queen side, so I'm expecting rook C8 here at some point, but we'll see. Good move. Oh, there's no knight takes D4 here, I don't think so. Let's see. B5. So notice, the only open file is the C file. All the activity will be there. Now, I think in this position, black has one problem. Knight bishop. Where is it going? No space. So yeah, this will be a bit hard for black to play, especially for junior sections. It's recommended you look for openings which have space. Caro-Kann, E4, E5. Dragon is not one of them, but it's still playable if you study it well. B4. Now already this is just a discovered attack here. I think this is a bit basic. I don't know, can white sacrifice back? Takes. Then you simply lose the last pawn. So you're simply down a pawn. I don't know. You can take with the bishop or the knight. I don't think there's any move that should be so bad. Yeah, all of them are the same, but knight takes is slightly better. So yeah, white is in some little trouble here. And once again, I'm struggling to find a plan for white now. Do you go bishop D2? If you go bishop D2, you lose the bishop pair on the spot. And now the dragon, yeah, it's just rook C8 again. Double pawns, weaknesses. Yeah, this one is not going in a very good direction, from my opinion. I don't think this one is... I don't understand the logic behind B4 here. So it's falling for a tactic on the spot. Let's go to Simiu Jadon, under 13 champion versus Jeshurun. No, Jeshurun is white, definitely. I'll go back to f5. I won't dwell in the opening so much. All this is theory, but I think white is short of squares clearly. You don't have a lot of squares. You don't even have a lot of plans. You can't even remove your bishop. So yeah, we'll try to find moves for white. I don't know. The only thing I do know in these types of positions with f5 and e5 from King's Indian is it's not always a good idea to play f4. It's not all. This one even falls for a tactic. Knight takes e5, pawn takes e5, then d6, and now suddenly notice white is free. The pieces are a bit better compared to the last one. So anyway, I wanted to comment something about f4. Now the problem forget about the tactic first. The problem about this is white gets this bind on e4. So for instance, knight here. Then you have this knight e4 idea, which notice now the pawns are stuck. The 3 pawns, d6, e5, and f4. They don't have moves easily, so it's very hard for black to make progress. So when you have this position, leave the pawns like this, these 2 pawns. And the point is, at some point you can decide to go e4, f4 instead of f4, e4. So that's the important note. Once again, white might struggle here to get a plan. I think the opening has not gone so well. If you see that by move, we're still in the opening and already black has a slight advantage. It simply means something went wrong for white in the opening. Plus, even as a chess player, you can just see white's pieces don't have a lot of squares. Now, Jadon has seen the tactic, which is at some point knight takes e5, d6. So he has decided to move the king. And this might look like a funny move, but he's also preparing g5 at some point, going all out for an attack. And white only has a knight on the king side. Between the king and safety, it's only a knight. So this one might actually end up very sharp in the next 10 moves. I think this one will be... So bishop b3, knight c5. I think at some point there's something I'll comment about this move. This bishop is the worst piece for white. Somehow it's attacking its own pawn. You know, sometimes it's not bad to allow white to actually capture it. And now if you look at this position a bit, you'll realize, yes, you are down, you don't have a bishop pair, but your rook will come to c1. At least you have activity on the c file. Your knight has the c4 outpost at some point after a5. So I'm not really of the idea where if you have a bad piece and your opponent attacks it, allow them to attack it. This is a weakness. So white ended up saving a piece that is not good. So white moved on to c4. Now I think you have to go, now the idea I just mentioned actually was played, I had not seen it. You have to go knight d2 and e4. You have to stop these pawns at all costs. If you allow them, this game will end in very few minutes. And he didn't stop the e4. Now this should be over. And of course Jadon, being a tactician, found it. So yeah, now this one is close to... And then f3, you just sacrifice a free pawn, but I don't think it's a pawn. Actually, you end up losing a piece here. If you take... Yeah, the computer is even going for a checkmating pattern. This is a bit dangerous. So this game will be ending shortly, I think, in my opinion, because now you're being mated on g2. And notice again the bishop is not so good. And the bishop, it looks good, but it's... So anytime you have this f4 structure, you need to understand that you need to blockade this e4 square. I had mentioned that earlier, but Jadon found the correct move. So I mean, I think even here f3, I don't even think you need to take the...
Can we follow the game closely physically? This one? Do you recommend we go and put the camera there?
This game should be ending quite shortly. Then I will go to the next game, which is for
this
Bella.
This
one is just... I mean, there is a very dangerous attack happening here. that, yeah, even pawn takes should be a good move. Even pawn takes is just devastating here a bit. So the king side is weak. Ideas are bishop e5. We are being mated on h2. There is also a Lolly's mate on g3, on g2. So h2 and g2 are weak.
Okay.
All the pieces are on the queen side. So this might end a bit shortly.
Okay.
In my opinion, I think it's just. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it will go. I don't think they have yet played. Let me just click again. Yes. So I'll be taking a short break and then I'll be back in a few minutes.
Good job, Bella. The game you're watching right now, this is Shukri Shakira in green playing white versus Bella Nashipai. These girls are amazing, extremely strong. In the last round, we just saw Shukri beat Zuri Kaloki. Kaloki Zuri has been one of the strongest chess players amongst the ladies, not just amongst the juniors. Very, very strong. But Bella put on a disciplined display, well controlled to win. And right now she's playing Shukri. Shukri is equally strong. So this is a fight between two giants. This is a fight between two giants. I think both of them are on maximum points, 7 out of 7. Playing round 8, whoever wins this will be in pole position to win. So we are taking a small break, and the reason for that is simply we had some very good commentary from national champion Methu, and we need to see him. So that's what we are trying to figure out. So remember that you can paste your comment as you progress. and your comment will show up live. Thank you so much, Kelly Mwaniki, who was asking about white castling, queenside, whether that works. I know Matthew answered that. And the second question was in this kind of Sicilian dragon, whether bishop to h6 can be played to sacrifice a rook on f8. That is definitely, yeah, I know Metu has not that as well. So give us a moment. We try and see if we can bring Metu in so we can see him. That's really what we're working towards. It will be great to see the master himself.
So that utaniambia? Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay. Let me just use it.
Method. So let me just show you something very easy.
Yes.